Yes.
We did it. All right, Eshan, welcome to the FI podcast, where we go deep on Web3 infrastructure. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm great. Today is a great day.
Well, today is a great day, Eshan, because I am extremely excited. You have put some interesting topics on the docket for today. My most favorite is Bitcoin and Jack Dorsey. So let's start there. What's going on with Jack? What's he up to?
I just thought, there's been a lot of stuff going on in the Bitcoin world the last couple of months. Sorry, there's been a lot of stuff going on with like the Bitcoin price, right? And then the Bitcoin world, there was the halving, right? People are like, oh, will Bitcoin like go to the moon? Like, will it hit 100K by end of May? And then, it's, I don't know what it's sitting at right now, probably 62 or 63,000. It hit 55. It came back up. Actually, what is Bitcoin sitting at right now?
Let's check the price. It's a good marker. $61,000.
61,600. Okay. Yeah. So it's just been all over, right? And then there's been the Fed release saying that they weren't going to, there were supposed to be three. The market was expecting 3 rate cuts this year. Then the Fed pushed back, right? And then the Fed announced that they seemed unlikely that they were going to increase interest rates, right? This happened this week. So I think the prices went up. There in the middle, there was a fear that Israel and Iran were going to end up in a war. And so the equities and stocks and everything crashed. So I think there's just an interesting conversation to have with what's happening in the world and how does it relate to the Bitcoin price, right? So I was thinking maybe we can just highlight some of the things that have been happening and then just kind of talk through a bunch of stuff. So Block, which is Jack Dorsey's company, which owns Square and Cash App and a bunch of other things. It's a fintech company. They released things that they made $80 million in gross profit just from Bitcoin in Q1 of this year. So that's January through March, right? And they're going to add, they already have $4.7 billion worth of Bitcoin if we're assuming that's worth at 59,000. So obviously more now. And they're going to continue to add Bitcoin holdings, right, this year. Then there was, BlackRock, is saying that, there's a bunch of interesting stuff with the Bitcoin spot ETFs, right? So one is that for a long time, there was inflows into the Bitcoin ETFs, which means that more money was leaving the Bitcoin ETFs than was leaving the Bitcoin ETFs. I think it was some basically every single day for 71 straight days or something like that, right? And then for a couple days in a row, there have been more outflows from the Bitcoin ETFs, right? And so, one thing that, the news came out was that there's been $563 million have exited from BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF, right? So a lot of outflows. Total outflows have been 563 million, with BlackRock being 37, Fidelity being 191, etc. Right? There are 11 spot Bitcoin ETFs that had this. And what JP Morgan said was that there was a lot of profit taking. So when Bitcoin hit 70,000, 71,000, 72,000, etc., a lot of people were like, I should exit out of this. And honestly, I also should have exited out. I don't know why I did. I'm just long on crypto, so I've never exited out of anything. It seems kind of stupid.
But buy high and sell low? Is that how it works?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Buy high and sell low. And so a lot of people, so there's a couple interesting things that a lot of people took profits. So that's why you saw a lot of outflows. And also a lot of those profits came from retail. So retail investors, JP Morgan, I think, made an announcement saying that a lot of the Bitcoin ETF outflow and general selling of Bitcoin was done by retail investors taking profits. I think overall that's pretty healthy, actually. That means that retail made money, right? So that's good. So yeah, I think there was like, there was just like a bunch of interesting Bitcoin news. Then the last piece of news was BlackRock is expecting sovereign wealth funds, pensions, basically large scale institutional money to start earmarking some of their portfolio, right? Like if you think about their asset classes that they have, assigning like Bitcoin ETFs like an asset class and putting some money in there. And so they're expecting like institutional money to come in over time. Now, I don't know if this is like marketing by them to get more people interested, or if it's, if this is what their research is showing. So yeah, I thought there was like a bunch of interesting like market news on Bitcoin. I guess that my first, before we get into individual stuff, like if you see all this stuff together, Wes, what's generally your take on what's happening in like the Bitcoin markets and the overall sentiment of Bitcoin?
I love it. It's not just a boomer coin anymore. It's back. Bitcoin is real again. I mean, it's funny because like a lot of people that are less involved in crypto would say Bitcoin or crypto is too volatile, or Bitcoin and crypto is like more of a nascent technology. Like these trends and these comments of these massive institutions, like these are such huge validations that it is becoming a more established asset class. I mean, we work in the space, we have a certain opinion, but to see these larger institutions have this opinion, to see more Fortune 500 companies start adding it on their balance sheet for various purposes, it's just massive. And I feel like it's not necessarily a linear process, but more of like a snowball effect that as these, it's almost like a game of pretend. If we say mid cap bonds are really important, everybody else starts to think they're important. And if we say, the Japanese yen is really important for it becomes important, valuable. Now it's the case with Bitcoin. We think that Bitcoin is serious, it's important, it's relevant. And as more of these people try to validate it, I think that's a very powerful platform, regardless of the current price action for the next few years. It's like a new era of stability, and it's a new era of legitimacy for Bitcoin that's happening right in front of us. I don't know if there's anything that could stop it. What do you think?
Do you remember when like JP Morgan and I don't remember if BlackRock was involved, but a lot of these Wall Street companies are like crypto's a scam, Bitcoin's a scam, we'll never support it, blah blah blah. And
Oh
now there are
yes,
11 companies with Bitcoin ETFs. More companies want to make Bitcoin ETFs. BlackRock is talking about an Ethereum ETF, right? Like
yes,
it's like completely different from well, this is just 3 years ago, right? Like 3 years ago, these
yeah.
guys were like, this is a scam. And now they're like, okay, well, like they've lost, right? They're offering the product. So what do you think about that?
That's it. No, it's funny. I mean, you can even find news clips of Jamie Dimon last month saying that, like, Bitcoin is mostly a scam. Blockchain is good, but Bitcoin is bad. But, even in those situations, it's really kind of like duplicitous because his company has to take blockchain and crypto and Bitcoin very seriously in order to retain relevancy for their investors and their family offices and invest with them. So yeah, I think it's an unavoidable situation. I think maybe it's a bit of a threat to their business model long term, but at the same time, they're doing the best they can to accommodate and
Mhm.
be a major player in the space.
Yeah, I mean, I
Um,
think like Bitcoin is here to stay. Like, I don't think governments are going to shut down Bitcoin anymore because the SEC has approved it. There's so much institutional money in it, right? Like, the
mhm.
day that, can you imagine, pension funds start investing in Bitcoin, right, through the ETF, and institutional money comes in, like, they're not going to, they do anything and those values go down, like, that'll affect so many people, right? So, like, they're not, it's basically, at least Bitcoin is here to stay. Um, Now, like I've always worried like there are like long-term like concerns with like Bitcoin and like what if there are not enough miners or what if it leads to centralization and stuff like that. But like I know that's also like a future worry. Um
Yeah, no, it's funny. I just got a note. Have you ever heard of the firm Chainalysis that does KYC for wallets, or sort of like
mhm.
one of the larger players in the space?
Yeah.
I get newsletter updates from them every so often. They just released that they are no longer supporting a fork of Bitcoin named Bitcoin SV. I don't know if you've heard of this one.
No.
Bitcoin Satoshi's Vision.
Okay.
So this was really popular about 3 years ago. One of the last bull markets, there were a number of people that were trying to fork Bitcoin, and they were trying to change like the transaction size or trying to change like the memory allocation on the Bitcoin miners, little tweaks and adjustments, partly to what you described, which is like we wanted to be more decentralized. Let's change the core protocol. So there were a few folks that created their own forks of Bitcoin, and even people that had Bitcoin on Coinbase, they got these other little forks, and they're sort of worthless. Bitcoin SV was one of the more like funny ones because of its name, but now even those forks themselves are sort of dying down, which says something. Just two things. One, it says that if people like feel like, to your point, at any point they say, I don't feel like Bitcoin is decentralized enough, they can absolutely fork it and they can form their own version of Bitcoin. And then also the market can vote constantly about whether it moves capital between these different forks to say, I think this is more legitimate or that's more legitimate. So it's just nice to see a healthy functioning economy, like a natural selection where people can vote and you can see these various versions succeed over time.
Yeah, that is actually pretty interesting. I forgot totally. That's what I love about like these open source protocols is that it's one, I mean, decentralized, not controlled by anyone, right? But two, it's like if you don't agree with the decisions that are being made by the community, you can fork it, create your own, right? And see if community members will join yours. And you can tell by like the interest in the community if like, people and the vote, but the vote in money, if people want to, if they agree with your vision or not. So I've always thought that was super cool. On a slight tangent on this chain analysis thing, I I saw something on CoinDesk. So we spoke about USDT, right?
Yeah.
Like
Tether.
and USDC Tether. So I just saw something on CoinDesk that Tether enters transaction surveillance partnership with Chainalysis as regulatory pressure mounts. Um, so it's actually not to do with audits, right? We saw the CTO of USDT, and allegedly they don't have audits, and there's a bunch of other stuff, and it's let's say potentially not as secure as USDC, but now they are having the surveillance system with Chainalysis to include like international sanctions compliance and illicit transfer detection for funding of terrorism and and stuff like that. So it's funny that you mentioned Chainalysis. I saw that. I was gonna put it on the docket for today, and I decided not to. But now we're back.
No,
Now we're
it's
back on that.
interesting. It's a good spicy topic. I mean, that's the other aspect, like, USDC with Circle and also USDT is that like they want to grow, they want to do more business in the US. In order to do business in the US, they have to be considerate of sanctions against Iran and North Korea and other countries, the US sanctions. Do you have an opinion, like philosophically, like if for these sort of stable coins, should they tie themselves to U.S. sanctions in order to do business here in the U.S. and avoid potential repercussions, or should they be more sort of like um, uh, censorship resistant, or sort of like not compliant with those things? To be more like some sort of like philosophical neutrality.
I don't think that you can be censorship resistant to like democratic government laws. Like I think it's an ideal, like it's a very libertarian way of thinking of like, you know what, like F the government, like they can't decide what to do. But then at the same time, like I don't hear anyone being like, you know what, I want to drive on the other side of the road, or like kids shouldn't wear seat belts, or like somebody shouldn't have a tank on the road that they can drive, right? Like I feel like people pick and choose where like they get super into like, oh, the government shouldn't control how I live, but they want like social security, or they want stability in financial markets, right? Like as soon as you've decided that like you have a representative democracy, making decisions on the behalf of the citizens, right? I just don't think that the whole like like being censorship resistant from the government works. I think when I think about censorship resistant, I think about like censorship resistant from other private in industry or private companies. So like, we talk about this a lot with compute. It's like so over 50% of nodes are run on public cloud for Ethereum, right? I want to see censorship resistant by people not running this on public cloud and going and like installing hardware in data centers and running it. That to me, that is censorship resistant.
Yeah.
I just it's just hard to me to buy like, like, oh, you're like a financial company and you're not gonna follow like financial rules in the US because of a belief in censorship resistant. Like it's like saying like, like if there was a religion that was like, oh yeah, we can be polygamous. Well, the US doesn't allow polygamy. And you can't just be like, oh, I believe in it and so
Yeah.
therefore I should have it. I don't know.
Right.
What's your take on that?
No, I think it's a super interesting rubber meets the road. I mean, like there's lots of folks in the crypto ecosystem that are they are libertarian or they are like anarchists and they want like the maximum personal freedoms. They want, they do not want to be censored in any capacity. There's also the benefits of hiring U.S. employees and doing business in the U.S. There's capital here. There's a lot of best opportunities to do business here. And if you want to do business here, you effectively have to follow the U.S. laws.
But that's true for every country, right? Like the problem with the SEC isn't that they are different from other countries. The problem with the SEC is that the problem in the US is that there's no legislation around what are the rules. And then the SEC is like, in our eyes, like not following the current rules or like making up their own rules. Right. So, but like,
that's also
you can't go to like any country, forget like countries with dictators. But like you can't go to any democracy and be like, I'm going to follow my own set of rules that are different from the country's rules. Right?
Could you go to like Cyprus or Bali or like some like sort of, pseudo, like are there countries like that you can get away with just doing whatever you want in some sense? Like,
I mean, I'm sure there are countries that are too small to put up crypto regulations, so maybe they don't care, right? But like, I guess the censorship resistant thing becomes like, normally when we talk about censorship resistant, talks about freedom of speech. Like, what does the government stop you from saying, right? But it's never, before crypto, it's never been about what does the government stop you from doing, right? And if people are truly like, I don't want the government to tell me to do everything, then you cannot get upset if like there's no law of order, right? You can't get upset that like somebody goes out, buys a machine gun and like, does something bad with it.
What's
or you
the
can't
limit
get upset
of that freedom?
Yeah, exactly. What's the limit? Where like financial scams, right? Like everyone wants SBF to go to jail, but like if he was censorship resistant, then he wouldn't go to jail. There would be no like rules, right? Like how far do you push that? I don't think you can just come into any country, forget the US, and be like, you know what, we're gonna allow terrorists to like, use our product and we're not going to do anything about it, regardless if you're open source and decentralized or not, right? I don't think that's like, I don't think you can sell that to the public, right? I don't
you're
think,
totally right.
I don't think anyone in the world, like, I don't want to hear about someone being like, oh yeah, like, a terrorist was able to like set off a bomb somewhere because they were able to get funding in this way. And it was like, oh, because we're censorship resistant, we didn't do anything. Like, I don't buy that.
You're right. No, like there's real world consequences to being truly censorship resistant, especially from a financial perspective. I mean, like the straw man argument is to say like, I want everything I do to be free and censorship resistant, but I want everyone else to be censored and I want everyone else to be safe. That is kind of like the maxim of the straw man. So yeah, you're right. I mean, at the end of the day, the biggest projects that we work with in crypto do follow the laws of these various areas. So hopefully it can continue.
As you can tell, I feel pretty strongly about this because it's always like, so like generally like people who are like techno optimists and people in crypto, they'll want to be like censorship resistant, but then they're like, I don't want the government to tell me what I can do. But then if you like, and again, like, political stuff aside, but they're generally left leaning. But then if you were like, oh, like the government shouldn't allow this, like should allow this right leaning thing to happen, right? That people don't support, they'd be like, no, but the government should stop that from happening. And it's like, well, that's not censorship resistant. That's the government deciding what you can and can't do, right? So I agree with you. It's always like, I don't want the government to tell me what to do, but I want the government to tell everyone else what to do.
Exactly. That's a tough balance. I mean, even like Balaji Srinivasan, I don't know if you follow this like network state concept that he's talked about. Have you seen he has a book about this?
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
then it's kind of the interesting question is like, well, who runs the network state? Who
Yeah.
participates, and what are the conditions in the network state? But I don't know. At the end of the day, like just the fact that finance can flow so much more freely, it feels like there's like some interesting dynamics at play. But I think it's going to take a long time before any of that really gets ironed out. I mean, even in the AI space, like, for example, if they determined that there needed to be a regulatory approval or a certification before someone could train an AI model, then does every country need to abide by that for the US? Does that affect like crypto? Does crypto become a mechanism to build these AI models that are not yet fully certified? There's some interesting like implications. We all want to be able to have access to US markets. We live in the US. So let's, if anyone's listening from the SEC, we are following the laws for
Exactly.
the record.
Exactly.
We encourage all our listeners to follow the laws and be good citizens.
Yeah. Exactly. But and it's also, but again, it's just not the US, right? It's like the same thing in Europe. It's the same thing. Like even it's just that other countries have like better crypto regulations. Like the rules are clear, whereas the US is really bad. The rules are not clear, right? But but in general, like everyone is gonna have to follow the rules, right?
One day we'll get there. Well, can I share one more interesting story before we get off topic of Bitcoin? There's one thing I forgot to share with you that is super interesting.
Yeah, go for it.
So this is from our best bud on the podcast, Michael Saylor from MicroStrategies. Did you hear the news this week that MicroStrategies is coming out with a new product offering called MicroStrategy Orange?
I did. I actually did not. I saw some headlines about it, and I just ignored it, and I moved on. So, please share what.
Yeah, I saw this a couple days ago. They just had their big annual user conference, and Michael Saylor has been in the news. He's kind of recognized as the biggest corporate adopter of Bitcoin over the past couple of years. He is super orange pilled. If you see him interview, he's very serious and very direct about Bitcoin is the future. Everything is going to become Bitcoin effectively. Now his product, MicroStrategies, which traditionally has a lot of established enterprise Web 2 contracts with Fortune 500 companies to provide analytics and mobile applications, is launching a new service to provide decentralized identity based on Bitcoin ordinals, Bitcoin inscriptions, and it's going to be an enterprise offering around identity.
Very cool.
So it's not just treasury anymore. Now it's Bitcoin for the enterprise. What do you think? Is there a play there?
I'm not well versed enough to know, but I would guess, yeah. Like, I would guess at some point, like, I think at some point that I think we've spoken about this where like decentralized software and blockchain and all of these things that we're super excited about today just become normal internet technologies that people use. And, this is like the first step in that direction.
You're right. Like talking about NFTs kind of being embedded behind the scenes in various products. But what if it wasn't even Ethereum? What if Bitcoin ended up coming back to be like the platform for all of these things? Like, wow, that would be.
Yeah, I don't know.
Some kind
I
of
don't
karma.
know the whole like Bitcoin versus Ethereum, and like or other ecosystems, but like I know companies. I just spoke to a company. I forget which one, but they're doing like private blockchain for their clients. So like like it's not like it's not Ethereum. It's like you build your own blockchain, and the consensus algorithm is run by like the actual like it's a consortium, and so it's like run by like the people in the consortium, and it's an enterprise product. And I can't share who, but yeah, it's like I think like blockchain as a technology is gonna like there'll be a lot of stuff that happens like outside of like Ethereum or Bitcoin or Solana or whatever. I also heard of other people building like private blockchains on top of Ethereum. Now, technically, I don't know how that works, so I can't speak to it. But like people are trying to figure out like, oh, let's just like either they're forking it or they're building on top of it. I don't know, but they're building like this Ethereum kind of blockchain for like enterprise use case for like companies being able to do business with each other. So I do think I keep thinking that like blockchain as a technology and will get to enterprise over the next decade. Yeah,
very cool. All the better.
What do you think? What do you think about this strategy, by the way?
The strategy for MicroStrategy specifically?
From MicroStrategy, like MicroStrategy Orange.
I've never met with an enterprise that said we want to have our users' identity associated with the Bitcoin blockchain So I've never seen a use case that's driving that, which makes me a little like bearish. But
Mm-hmm.
also, honestly, in some cases, you have to have companies building new tech, and then people come up and they kind of identify unforeseen use cases. So I'm optimistic, cautiously optimistic that,
Yeah.
like, there was this one example of someone sending an email, but the email was signed according to their Bitcoin transactions, effectively.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess you could verify the identity. If I get an email from my stockbroker or someone sensitive, and then I could try that back to their Bitcoin identity, do I trust that more than like SSL certificates? Is there a
Mm-hmm.
place to use it there? Seems new. Seems like uncharted, effectively. But
Yeah.
people that have the cash, like MicroStrategies, to try these things. This is actually one of the first times in recent memory that a major Fortune 500 company has been at the forefront of any kind of blockchain innovative use case like
Mm-hmm.
this. Traditionally, it's been a Web3 company that's been doing this. So
Mm-hmm.
the fact that they're trying it, they've got enough cash, they've made a lot of money off Bitcoin, I think is just super bullish. And I'm glad they're giving
Yeah.
it a shot.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. I think what you said is totally right. And I think there's so many use cases that we just can't think of, right? Like we are limited by our, biases and our like perception of the world and also like lack of time. Like, we have all of us. So like somebody needs to like, we might be innovating like us as in Lumino might be innovating in like the intersection of like crypto and AI. There's someone else innovating at the intersection of like blockchain and digital identity. And like what we're doing might not make sense to someone else, but what they're doing might not make sense to us, but you really don't know until like, you go out in the market and try to like get customers, right?
Give it a chance. It's still early
Yeah.
days. I still think
Yeah.
it's early days, man. We're
Yeah.
not all using it yet.
Exactly.
Well,
And then the final stuff on the
yeah.
Bitcoin stuff, I was kind of curious what you thought about this is that there's some US lawmakers in the House and the Senate that are reportedly pressuring the SEC to approve options trading on Bitcoin exchange traded products. Um, right. So like basically, I think someone wrote like, "Oh, we urge you without delay to approve options on spot Bitcoin ETFs or to provide an explanation for the Commission's difference in a treatment between options for Bitcoin future ETFs, which are currently trading, and options for the spot Bitcoin ETPs, right? Bitcoin exchange traded products." So I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that specifically.
I love it. I love it. What's funny is like, let me jump back here real quick. A lot of people will criticize decentralized finance and DeFi people as being degenerate gamblers. That is
Mm-hmm.
like sometimes a stereotype. But let's not forget that Wall Street is the original, the OG
Exactly.
degenerate gamblers.
Exactly.
The difference is those degenerate gamblers have a lot of clout with our lawmakers. And I think if
Mm-hmm.
some dude is a senator or dudette is a senator in middle of nowhere and they're writing Gary Gensler to say, hey, I want to like YOLO my bags into a Bitcoin ETF through my hedge fund, approve this. I think it's just like classic and fascinating. I love it. I'm glad that it's happening because honestly, at the end of the day, the more that these products can be liquid, the more that they can move in various ways. I think it actually has a stabilizing effect long term over the market because then it gives people flexibility to do exotic trading at the edges. And I think it reinforces the idea that like eventually, maybe not within this specific slice of the traditional markets, but at least with the decentralized finance, everyone can get access to it, not just people that have a senator they're paying that have access to expensive multi-million-dollar hedge funds, but everybody can get access to it. What do you think about that, though?
What do you think about like the fact that it takes like I mean, what's interesting is that like it basically takes Wall Street and politicians to make DeFi move forward. Like in the I don't want to say the real world, but like in Congress and like all of that. Like we can talk about like technical improvements and use cases and all of that, but like it literally takes like politicians and Wall Street to get interested before like the SEC is like, yeah, whatever, like let's do it.
Yeah, well, it's really thin because traditionally the SEC's purpose was we're defending the consumer. We're defending consumer against like dangerous financial instruments that could be harmful for them. Whereas the reality is, like in DeFi, like the consumer can go and take advantage of all these mechanisms right now. And now it's actually traditional finance that unfortunately has to sort of catch up with what's going on in Web3. Because otherwise, like, let's be honest, if those investors that want these products that are pressuring lawmakers to approve this, if they can't do this in the US through publicly traded markets, they will probably do it anyways, either through overseas options markets or through DeFi. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's almost a struggle for the U.S. financial system to. This is going to be hyperbole. I'm going to be a little hyperbolic. It's a little bit of a struggle for the U.S. financial system to remain relevant because that capital is going to go where it wants to go. And what happens if the U.S. system can't keep up with it? Do you still say that we're trying to we're trying to protect consumers? Is that still relevant versus global digital competition? What do you think?
I don't think that America's ever going to lose, because either what's going to happen is that like these things will, like, people will keep putting capital in the US because, like, we're the richest country in the world and have like a population growth that's strong. So like, that just keeps enabling financial markets. Or like at some point, like, it's like the whole, like, America was the last of the Western countries to to make equal rights for like the LGBTQ community, right? But like it happened. And like, and that's like on social issues where America is like pretty conservative, but America is pretty like innovative on like the business and financial side. And I think that like there's no way that like once, lawmakers start hearing from either hedge funds people or from their constituents that they want access to DeFi markets and crypto, that at some point the tide will turn and like you'll just see they'll just pass regulation and like, it'll all be allowed here with, proper guardrails in place, is my opinion on this.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. It's interesting to see the demands going through. Like they are clearly lobbying their lawmakers to have these laws passed. And maybe, in a previous world prior to DeFi and crypto, there was no alternative. So the status quo was good enough. But now that there is an alternative,
Yeah.
they're going to put pressure on the traditional system.
I also do expect like all of this, all of the plumbing that Wall Street uses to be replaced by like blockchain, either private blockchain networks or public blockchain networks over the next decade, because from a technical perspective, it's much more efficient. And from a liquidity perspective, it's better.
It's a great point. Speed
Right.
of transactions,
Yeah.
cost of transactions. Like you're seeing with BlackRock and other folks as well.
Needing like, the power of clearing houses today is like pretty big, right?
So what happens when like DTC, was it DTCC, the company that like manages most of the back end clearing of like all these stocks and things, when they start to, would they adopt blockchain?
Yeah, I actually think so.
Company records.
I mean, if you can make things go much faster and you don't have to have like, there's also a lot less market risk when like if some trades are happening and then the price suddenly plunges or goes up, right? And then you have to stop some sort of trading. Like the amount of market risk that goes down with blockchain is just significant. So I expect that over 10 years, like all the big finance companies, they're all financial services companies, they're all already experimenting with blockchain. It's not like these guys are sitting on the sidelines being like blockchain is a fake technology. It's actually like, we have this great system that is like stress tested, and how long does it take to build like this new technologically advanced system and stress test that system, right? That's the question. And so like, that's why it'll take 10 years.
That's a great point, though. I mean, like right now, like I can go to my wallet on Etherscan and I can see, oh, I traded this Tether token for this Ethereum token 18 days ago, and I can see that transaction is still on the record, and I can see exactly where it transactioned to. But like, wow, if I could do that with my Fidelity brokerage transaction, and I could say, oh, like it's a public record of where these stocks went. That's a kind of a powerful idea to bring into traditional finance.
Because unless you're actually in traditional finance, unless you're like paying someone for all of that data, you can't get access. Like no one actually knows, right? Like Robinhood knows only what Robinhood users do, and like Fidelity knows only what Fidelity users do, and that each brokerage only know. But like there are a bunch of people that know what everyone does because they pay like hundreds of millions of dollars a year to get access to that data from the people all the way at the bottom of the stack. But like imagine that everything is on like, like a public blockchain, which I think it'll be a private blockchain, but let's just pretend it was a public blockchain, then everyone would know what's happening, right? And then everyone would like move forward from like a financial perspective and be able to build different financial products, especially in analytics, right? And like insights and intelligence.
I love that idea. I love that idea. There needs to be an app, a trading app that's very easy for millennials to use, but instead of calling it Robinhood, we call it Sheriff of Nottingham. And it posts all the information publicly. $1 billion
I love
idea.
it.
There we go.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
Cool. Last piece of news: CZ got 4 months in prison. What do you think?
Wow. I mean, these lawmakers, these judicial folks have a great sense of irony because it's four. I don't know if you recall the four thing with CZ.
Oh no, we talked about this though, right? Like I feel like what was that?
Yes. That was his famous tweet. He had 2023. It was like he posted this constantly. Four things that he was proposing to simplify his organization in the bear market. One was like giving to communities. Two was like innovation. And the fourth was to ignore the FUD. When people say negative things about Binance publicly, and then he would constantly post a number four, him holding up the number four. And then now he had to settle for $4 billion with a DOJ, and then he got 4 months in prison. Wow.
That's hilarious.
That's deep. That's some deep trolling from the judge.
Oh my god.
But how do you feel about it? How do you feel about the sentencing?
I mean, I don't know. I like it's interesting. I mean, first of all, like he didn't really break the law like SBF did, right? What is it?
Right.
Like it would like the official sentencing guidelines were like a year. The Department of Justice asked for 3 years. The CZ's lawyers asked for 1 month, right? He was like super sorry. I mean, it was a good strategy. I don't know if he's actually sorry or not, but his strategy was like be remorseful, accept guilt, blame it on himself. Binance paid the fine, right? They didn't fight it, right? And they've agreed to like having a independent compliance monitor to ensure like fraud's not happening. But yeah, like there's like a bunch of stuff that happened, and I think that it shows that like it's very different from like the SPF,
Yeah, you're totally
SPF
right.
trial.
SPF
Also, I will
took
say
customer
CZ was
funds.
not accused of stealing from customers,
Yes.
but he was just accused of failing to implement the necessary compliance infrastructure expected of a money transmitter. So there's no like he committed fraud, he defrauded people, like there's nothing of that. So I think like, I don't know what the appropriate should have been, but like seems like if you beg for forgiveness, they will, not shoot you over it. So it looks
That's so nice to see. Honestly, let's be fair. Like, Sam Bankman-Fried took money from his customers and gambled with it. This guy did not take money from his customers. That's a massive step forward. Let's just I'm so appreciative that he didn't steal money from his own customers. Like, sure, he forgot to confirm if his customers were sanctioned or if they were terrorists. Okay, that's not good. Clearly he needs to face some penalties for that, which he is, and it's good, and hopefully future people will not do that. But it feels like progress, and at least he's complying with the laws. I mean, he's kind of playing ball. Like, I feel like this is a small, minor win for the industry. Maybe.
Yeah, it just seems that like and we'll see what happens with Coinbase. And I don't want to be like Coinbase has never done this, but it just seems that like all these exchanges, like they were always doing something shady, right? Like in this case, like he doesn't implement some things that are required, which is obviously not that bad relative to other things, but like I don't think that should be like the standard should be like you follow the law. Right? You just follow the law.
The bar is so low. You're right. No, I think Coinbase is being monitored under a very tight microscope. They seem to be reporting everything. Their like financials at the end of the year are very tight, so hopefully they're in a better position. But there's always decentralized exchanges.
Exactly.
There's always that move.
Exactly. Well, which is like Uniswap is a great app, by the way. People should definitely go check out like Uniswap.
That's right.
They're the protocol and the app, right? So yeah.
Shout out to Uniswap. Also, support Uniswap. They're going to battle right now against the SEC, so hopefully they come out clean with that. They're going to get under the microscope a little bit, but that's a good battle to have.
I do think like I don't know. I feel like the government will just be like, F it, like all cryptos except for Bitcoin as securities. and I'm pretty unhappy with that. But I don't know if we can do anything about it.
Well, it'll be very interesting to see when the new administration comes into how they feel about it in the next few months.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Gary
Yeah.
might be a change of guard, which could be good.
Hopefully.
So, all
Yeah.
right.
Regardless of who wins, even if Biden wins, I hope that like there are new, like Gary Gensler is not that head of the SEC basically.
I don't know if Gary's going to have a really good like round 2 after this one, but it will be interesting to see, does CZ have a second act a year from now? Does he come back? He can't come back as Binance, I don't think, like, but does he come out with CZ coin or CZ chain?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, it's interesting. I also don't know if that's true for Gary also, because like aside from the fact that the SEC has been like anti-crypto, they've otherwise done a relatively good job. And so like if you take out the crypto component to it, I think there's like politicians are pretty happy with like his job at the SEC.
Oh, is that right? I didn't realize that. He has a pretty good reputation among lawmakers otherwise.
Yeah, I think like the whole crypto thing aside, like it's been like a solid, like solid 4 years for him. So
he'll get a cushy job somewhere in Wall Street. He'll be okay.
Yeah, he'll be fine. Yeah, he'll be fine for sure. Yeah, I mean, but the rumor is he's trying to be like like in the future be like treasury, the treasury secretary, right? And so like that's why he had to come hard out on crypto, because it seemed like he was buddies with SBF, and so he came hard on crypto so that he can be the treasury secretary in the future.
Okay. Well,
yeah, that's a new conspiracy theory. I mean, I heard it a long time ago, but now, like, if you want to get into conspiracy theories, there's a conspiracy theory for you.
I love a good conspiracy theory. All right,
we'll find out over the next 5 years. We can look back on this episode and be like, "Hey, we figured it out like 5 years ago, or 8 years ago, or whatever."
He's gonna have to work. He's gonna have to work really hard. There were a lot of close connections with him and SBF, so yeah. I wish him well. Bon chance to you, Gary. Well, Eshan, this was a blast.
Yeah,
much fun, man.
Yep,
we covered it. We nailed it, and I think that's all for today. Unless there's anything else, you think we need to hit on? All right, let's call it a day. Good times.
Bye.
Play us out.
Yes.